Hi everyone, it's very nice to see you again in this video. Before we start, I'd like to congratulate you on successfully completing the course. There is no denying that testing and assessment is always a challenging subject to master, and we do understand you must have experienced certain difficulties during the learning process. But we are so proud to say that you did a pretty good job. Once again, congratulations! Now it's time to take a quick look at what you've learned so far. Well, we've been through 10 modules together. So, to put in a nutshell, what is the course about? Let's pause the video for 1 minute and reflect on your own learning process. As we have stated in the introduction section, this course is designed to cover common tasks and steps in the language assessment process, including some major topics, which are the important concepts in language assessment, the assessment purposes and methods, the assessment theory, the instrument development, classroom assessment tasks, and so forth. Once finishing the course, you as its English teacher are expected to be able to understand how to conduct assessment of students' language competence in English classroom, reinforce your English language teaching knowledge and skills, reflect on your own profession, improve professionalism, and develop your critical learning skills. It doesn't sound like a piece of cake at all, right? But when seeing you here in this final video, I believe that you have already made it. Okay, now let's look at each module in one more details. Module 1, Language Assessment Process. This module focuses on three main points. First, definitions and relationships of key terms, including measurement, evaluation, assessment, and testing have been included. Remember, although those terms are closely related to each other, they cannot be used interchangeably. You also learned how to explain and distinguish among a wide range of language assessment purposes and identify steps in classroom assessment process. The most important knowledge in this module is the assessment process and specific steps. Please consider how these steps can be applied in your own context. Module 2 explains the importance of well-defined goals for language instruction and assessment practices. After this module, you're also expected to be able to name and define major categories in Bloom's taxonomy of thinking skills. You may have learned Bloom's taxonomy before, and it's highly important not only for assessment, but also for teaching. Besides, the main components in Weichmann concept of communicative language ability are defined. Another learning target that you may need to achieve in this module is to understand popular frameworks of communicative language ability in assessment practices. Module 3 is about assessment objectives in 4 language skills, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. You have learned about the assessment objectives in 4 major English skills, as well as how to write a set of learning goals for a particular English language lesson. Major criteria to evaluate a learning goals are also introduced. We hope that this knowledge has had practical application in your teaching context. It helps you to have a clearer view of the content of teaching and assessment. Module 4 titled alternative in language assessment methods. As the name suggests, what you have learned in these sections will enable you to appraise and criticize different methods in language assessment and justify your appraisal and criticism by relevant theoretical and empirical evidences. You can also identify main influential factors as your choice of appropriate assessment practice for a particular purpose or to a particular target population and in a particular context. What next? Module 5 focuses on a specific assessment instrument, namely selected response questions. You have learned the definition and the distinction of general types of assessment instruments for classroom assessment before having some insight into the features of closed-ended assessment instruments and questions. In addition, the module equips you with knowledge of evaluating the appropriateness of closed-ended assessment questions and tasks for different assessment purposes. Multiple choice tests are now used widely in Vietnam, even in the graduation exams of mathematics and English. So you'll benefit a lot from studying this module. Similar to Module 5, Module 6 likewise presents another assessment instrument, constructed response questions. After this module, you have been expected to be able to first interpret or evaluate the appropriateness of language assessment instruments for purpose of classroom assessment for learning. Distinguish major performance-based assessment instruments. Second, understand key principles in designing major performance-based language assessment instruments. And last but not least, evaluate major performance-based assessment instruments. You know, essay assignments are used widely in university and higher education tests and assignments. So, this module is really to bring you numerous merits. You'll understand how to evaluate the assignments that you are having to take. Module 7 brings you more insight into scoring language assessment. In this module, you have learned how to distinguish different types of instruments to score assessment results. Identify common flaws in scoring rubrics and understand tips in designing scoring rubrics. This module is critically important for Vietnamese teachers. I hope that you may have found the concept of module a good source of reference to you to reshape the scoring rubrics you have developed and better their quality. We have just briefly reviewed 7 modules. Now, let's move to Module 8, Interpreting the Assessment Results in Language Classroom, which is considered one of the most challenging modules in this course. Do you remember what you have learned so far? Okay. Well, Module 8 discusses different frameworks to interpret scores and different ways of recording scores. It also instructs you how to interpret assessment score from descriptive statistics. Additionally, you are expected to understand how to use descriptive statistics of assessment results to interpret the results. Norm-reference interpretations and criterion interpretation should be the key terms you need to remember. And criterion reference interpretation should be the destination of language assessment in Vietnam. Module 9 is all about reporting and giving feedback to students. the common process that all teachers need to conduct in their teaching career. This module gets you familiar with some different reporting methods and understand the pros and cons of each type. You also understand the features of feedback to enhance language learning. That's all about Unit 9. Now, we move to the last module with the qualities of good language assessment. To be more specific, 6 major qualities of a good language test has been mentioned. What are they? It's great if you can remember. If you don't, I highly recommend you to review the qualities because they are contributory factors of the usefulness of all tests that you have designed to assess your students' language. It's important to note that the validity is the most essential quality that you should particularly pay attention to when designing the test. For teachers of English, content validity is considered to play an indispensable role in any language test. After each module, we have provided you with a number of assignments so that you can reflect the target knowledge as well as bring the theory into practice. Specifically, by the end of the course, there are 2 major assignments that you need to complete, including quiz with various components and an 800-word essay describing and evaluating a classroom assessment plan with specific objectives, content, instruments, and steps to conduct the plan. We hope that you find them meaningful in your context. That is the end of this video. Thank you so much for your cooperation. See you in the next video.